Hi guys, welcome back to the next episode of Don't Fear the Wait, a podcast with me, your TinyTitan host, in all my unicorn glory today. I don't know why I'm saying it. Well, actually I do, because my t-shirt says life is all about unicorns, rainbows and glitter, which is quite exciting because I deadlifted in this today, and I didn't deadlift like a unicorn. I did kind of like shit some glitter out, but it's always a good thing, I suppose. In the hot seat today, it is not just an episode on my own or on my lonesome, so I'm not one of the solo things. I've actually got a gentleman who is pretty much, quote unquote, an unknown. Now, the reason why I've brought Danny on, sorry, hi Danny, you all right?
Hey.
The reason why I brought Danny on is because of the simple fact that he is a little bit of an unknown in the fitness industry. And I don't feel that he should be unknown, hence the reason why I've brought him on the podcast. As you all quite well know, I have interviewed a number of really well-known people on multiple occasions, and it's all been great to have all of these knowledge bombs. But so many times I have seen unknown coaches, unknown people in the industry, whether they be scientific or physiologists or whatever, they're putting out amazing content and really inspiring stuff, and yet people just aren't interacting with them. And that is what I found that Danny's been doing recently. So he's been putting out some really, really good content that I just picked up on, and I reached out and said, you know what, your content's wicked, and I do want you to know about that. So I'm going to hand over to Danny. Danny, you explain to the crowd who you are and what you're mostly interested in, etc., etc.
Right, yeah. So I've not been coaching a huge amount of time, but my background's mainly come from rugby, and then I got into bodybuilding, and then I eventually transitioned to powerlifting, and probably I'm almost coming back to bodybuilding again now. I just kind of flip between the two. And you know, my big passion is nutrition. I think that's what most people struggle with. So that's kind of what I like kind of getting into. And that's yeah, for me that's just what I like helping people with more. It's what people seem to struggle with and overlook.
Okay, so looking at your background then in rugby, what was it that, I mean, have you always been a rugby player, or what stemmed from that?
From a young age, so 11, 12 years old, I'd always played rugby to quite a high level. But when I was younger, I was always the skinny kid. So I was the guy out in the wing that was really fast but didn't really hold a lot of muscle. You know, that was my kind of like calling when I transitioned to the gym, was that I was always a skinny kid.
Okay.
You know, I put up a picture last week of, you know, what I looked like when I was 18, and I wasn't any more than about 10 stone.
Okay.
That was my initial kind of motivation to get into the gym.
So in terms of like rugby, I've got a couple of rugby players actually on my books at the moment because I do performance nutrition for them. And it's really interesting how I want to get your take on it, because it was quite interesting how I had to manipulate their programming in order to make them superstars in rugby. So obviously, when did you stop doing rugby? Let's have a look at that first.
I was about 18. So when I actually started out my career in engineering.
Okay.
So by trade, I've been an electrical engineer.
Right.
So I left school at 16, started my apprenticeship. And then when I started kind of my degree course as well, like just the work and studying took over. So for me, it wasn't really like feasible to try and keep both of them up at the same time.
Sure.
So my priority went into studying for the next kind of like 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And rugby took a back seat. And with how I was working, I kind of then fell into fitness and bodybuilding, and that just took over.
Right. Okay. So in terms of your nutrition then, looking at your rugby career first of all, because rugby players are similar to, well, realistically similar to football players in the fact that they come in the morning, they go and do their session out on the pitch, they come back in, they have some lunch, and then they go and hit the gym for a conditioning kind of session and actually lift some weights. Is that the same thing that you used to do in rugby?
No, I mean, it's come on really fast. Like, I remember, you know, this wasn't even 10 years ago. And even when you're looking at, like, at a club level, there wasn't really kind of any focus on the nutrition side. It wasn't until I was at kind of county level, and you look at the England Academy, is where you started actually getting a bit more of an insight into the sports science behind it.
Yeah.
And how much nutrition plays a part. But anything kind of below that, there wasn't there wasn't any focus on nutrition. Like after the game, it was like sausages and chips. You know, it was a general like pub food because of like the clubs used to meet up in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you got to like playing county rugby that you got an insight into kind of how much that affects your performance.
And it does trial over, doesn't it? Especially if you were to what I find so interesting is people actually think that they need to eat piles of foods for the work that they do, especially on a rugby pitch or a football pitch or anything like that. And it's surprising how many people just overeat or just kind of say, do you know what, just eat. And what about this? Go on.
I was going to say, one, they massively overestimate what they do.
Yeah.
You know, and then they massively underestimate what they eat. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like the fitness trackers, for example, it's like, oh, I burnt 1,000 calories. No, you've burnt barely a quarter of that.
Yeah.
But then they see that as a green light to then go and consume 1,000 calories.
Yeah, because they've earned it. For sure. So when you obviously did that one, then there was no real onus on nutrition. You then transitioned over and you wanted to go into bodybuilding first of all. So you had bodybuilding as your base of your strength work, realistically. Yeah. So why was it bodybuilding as opposed to strength gains, which is what you were doing in terms of your power lifts afterwards?
Because I was skinny, for me I put my focus into building muscle, and it was my uncle at the time that was into training in the gym that like first brought me into kind of, it was an independent bodybuilding gym that I joined. Okay. So a lot of the people there just took me under their wing, and I just became like quite just involved with the whole thing. I've got quite an addictive personality, so I ran it 100% and gave it everything. Mm-hmm. You know, and within 18 months, I was doing my first bodybuilding show.
Oh wow! Okay, very good.
After first kind of like stepping into the gym properly. You know, I think
how did it make you feel realistically? Did it, obviously you're going to go on as a novice or a first timer or whatever like that, but how did that make you feel when you were stood next to the guys in backstage, and obviously you thinking that you've only been doing this for 18 months?
For me, it was more of kind of proving people wrong. Like at the time, there was a lot of people at the gym that were like, "You've not even been here that long, and you're doing a bodybuilding show." It was, you know, almost like, "Well, I'm gonna prove you wrong." Mm-hmm. You know, because I was relatively young and I'd not been in the gym that long. So for me to kind of getting on stage, I think a lot of the people that, you know, were mocking me in kind is because they weren't doing it themselves.
Right. Okay.
You know, but for me, like it was a challenge more than anything.
For sure. And how did you fare? How did you get on with your first run?
Oh yeah, I won my first show.
All right. Okay. So
yeah, I was 21 at the time. Okay. And it was only a local show when I lived down in Plymouth, and I think there was like 5 or 6 of us, but I still won. A win's win.
Exactly. A win is a win. It doesn't matter how you win it, or, well, it does actually matter how you win it, in my personal opinion. But yeah, it doesn't matter how you win it, when you win it, or whatever like that. If you win, you win. So that's always a bonus.
Yeah.
So then from there then, let's actually talk about the first initial aspects of your bodybuilding, because you say that you've got a passion for nutrition. So what did you do? Were you a bog standard bro, egg whites and fish kind of guy? Or?
Oh, definitely. The guy who coached me, like, he's an amazing bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And he's still like on the bodybuilding scene today, and he's a phenomenal athlete. But he's like, he will eat like chicken, egg whites, bland, like no sauce, no seasoning, like year round, and that's his mentality. Like, and he's okay to do that. Like, he will do that, and that was my first introduction into how to diet for a bodybuilding show. It was chicken, turkey, 12 egg whites a day.
But
so once I'd come off of that diet, and I was like, oh, this can't be the only way to get in shape.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's when I started getting a bit more of an interest in the nutrition side, and I started looking at what other coaches were doing and how they were looking after their clients.
Okay. And what did you figure out?
Well, I mean, I think it's a big thing in the fitness industry. A lot of people like pigeonholing all of their clients into just one method.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it worked for me, so I'm going to do it to everyone else. And like, the only thing you see is their wins. Like, they might have like 50 clients, but if they post, 40 of them might have failed, but they posted the 10 that have done really well off their diet, and that's all you see. You're like, oh, well, it must be really good.
Yeah, that's it.
They do the whole like, well, it worked for me, so it'll work for most people.
I think that that's one of the biggest things that I see in the industry. We were having a bit of a chat about this anyway, weren't we, over on Messenger previously, and we were saying that a lot of the coaches out there find a method that has worked for them, so they just think that it is going to work for everybody else, and they don't actually individualize their clients.
No.
Which is extremely frustrating, because like, what happens, for example, if you have an allergy to white fish? You can't eat tilapia on the tilapia chicken and egg white diet. So what do you do? You know, and when you ask that of a coach, it's like, well, you've got to have tilapia, bro, because it thins the skin, and it thins my skin, so it'll thin your skin. Okay. And the mentality that went with it, or goes with those kind of diets, are something that, again, a lot of coaches, in my experience, or like, you know, the old school type of ones, or even some current ones, realistically, don't take into account, you know, because food is really emotional, as you've probably well known about. So obviously that's a little bit of a rant, but we'll probably get on to more rants later on down the line.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, so you were going on egg whites, chicken, tilapia, all the rest of it, all the green beans, and then you had a big carb up before the show, I'm assuming?
I would say, I wouldn't say big carb, but it was, you know, it was always relatively mild. I mean, I think with that, you just kind of play it by ear.
Right, okay.
You know, what I found is that when I actually came off the diet, anytime I tried to eat anything outside of what I was used to doing, I was just ill, and I'd built up so many like sensitivities to other food because I'd avoided it for so long.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you get over that? That's a really interesting one, actually.
Yeah. So it's, people think, you know, they look, oh, I can't eat this because it makes me really ill, and they've either eliminated it for so long that when they try and reintroduce it too heavily, they get, you know, and makes them ill.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I just, at the time, I just had to kind of grin and bear it and just start introducing normal foods.
I love how you say normal foods. It's just like,
yeah, but that's at the time, that's, yeah, but there shouldn't really be so much disparity between like your diet. If, you know, if I was going to prep for another show now, there wouldn't be much difference between how I eat now and how I would eat prepping. There wouldn't be. The only difference would be the food amounts.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, whereas you find most people get like some huge overhaul of their diet and their body's like, oh, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, for sure. That is so interesting. Yeah.
Why the one thing that, you know, people don't like to talk about is like just how bad my relationship with food was. You know, I'd come off this diet, and you see it more in females. You don't see a lot of men talk about it, but I was scared to eat. You know, I spent 4 months dieting, getting in the shape of my life, and, you know, I was scared to pick up a packet of crisps or go out for dinner, like with my girlfriend at the time. And I was so petrified of like losing that condition and eating food that would make me just generally feel like shit. You know, so you've got, at one end, you've got, I look really good, but, you know, physically and mentally, you're probably in the worst shape of your life, like in how you feel and how you function, and like your mental health as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I would actually add to that your dependability. It's almost like you can't depend on yourself. You have no self-accountability either, because you've been accountable to that coach for 16 weeks. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when people take on a coach generally, like a lot of people that I talk to, it's almost like they lose their own sense of like rational or like self-reasoning.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll talk to people and they're, oh yeah, my coach has put me on this and it's really not working. I really don't feel good. I'm like, well, tell him. Yeah, but he's my coach and he said it's going to be fine. I'm like, well, then he's like, that's what he's there for. Like, tell him this isn't okay and this isn't what you expect from someone. Yeah, people almost lose their sense of like, well, actually, no, what is good for me? They go, oh, well, I've paid the coach. This is what he says, so this is what I'll do.
Yeah, it's weird.
Don't stop to consider whether it's actually good for them or not.
Yeah, because it's almost like monkey be told, so monkey do. Whereas if you actually change that person who's doing some work for you, because realistically, a coach is working for you, you know, they're not the boss. They're working for you, or you are paying them and employing them. If you had a builder, for example, who put up a roof and it wasn't to your specifications, it wasn't to your liking, it wasn't something that was actually working for you, would you just kind of stand back and go, oh, well, it's all right because he said that it'll work?
Yeah.
You just wouldn't do that. So it's that loss of almost identity and self-identity and self-logic that I found with a lot of people, with coaches, just like you say, and they're scared of offending their coach. I don't get that either.
I've had this a lot recently, but I think and it's quite a worrying figure that probably a good, like, at least a third of my clients have all had like eating disorders or bad relationships with food at some point, mostly due to previous coaches. So when I say to them, like, I'll give them their initial plan and they're eating 800 calories more than they used to, it's like they almost have an anxiety attack and they're scared to eat that because of what their last coach has kind of given, like, drummed into them for weeks.
And how do you explain that that is what is needed in order for them to function optimally?
I mean, it depends on the person. People have got different anxieties. A lot of people are scared of, like, they spent so long dieting. I had one that was like, when I was, I've been eating 1,000 calories a day and I've not been losing weight. I was like, well, you've not been eating 1,000 calories, have you? You've clearly not. And it's like, this isn't an approach that works for you, obviously. It's like, you think that you need to eat this much to lose weight, but you're not eating 1,000 calories. So I posted about it the other day, and it's people then, like, they assume they have to suffer to lose weight or to get in shape. They assume that dieting has to be hard and they've got to be miserable. And, when they're sat at home on a Saturday, they've got to watch the rest of their family have a takeaway and they've just got to sit there with a chicken salad.
Yeah, Tupperware life.
Yeah, and it's really hard trying to convince someone that spent years of their life thinking they have to diet like that isn't how it works. And I think it takes a good couple of weeks for them to go, right, like, for them to realize that, right, I've been eating this many calories and my weight's not gone up. And then slowly the cogs start turning and they start having faith in what you're saying and what you're doing with them. Like, it takes a lot to undo years of behavior. So it's a long process for a lot of people.
It is, definitely. It's not something that can just be like switched overnight, click a finger and then it's like, oh, okay, cool. And trying to take somebody from 1,000 calories or carbophobes. Oh my God, so many carbophobes out there. I'm actually terrified of eating carbohydrates. And the biggest people that I've actually heard of it from, CrossFitters. Funny, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, funny, because like CrossFitters, I mean, I know it all stems from like the whole paleo thing back in the day, and you've got to eat paleo, which is just nuts and seeds and stuff like that, and don't ever eat processed foods. But it's like CrossFit is one of the biggest glycolytic sports out there. The energy demands that they require, is just phenomenal. So when I get a CrossFitter that comes over to me and I have a look at their diet and they have like 0 carbs in them and they look flat and depleted.
Why?
Yeah, it's just like, dude, eat some carbs. And, they eat the carbs that I give them, but they're so terrified, because some guys who are like 90 kilos, for example, and they're training 3 times a day, I give them 300 grams of carbs as a starting point. And they're like, holy shit, I'm never going to be able to eat that much. And I'm terrified about eating all of these carbs because I'm literally going to turn into a potato. So what happens? But then they eat it, their times improve, their lifts improve, their recovery is on point, so much more is developing and they look sick.
Yeah, so, and I don't know where that comes from. If you look, CrossFitting might get a bad name, but if you look at all of the best CrossFitters in the world, their physiques are phenomenal. Like, male or female, they have some of the best physiques in the world.
Sure.
And like the amount of athleticism that they have and how strong they are, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're doing Olympic lifts for reps.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, Olympic lifts are Olympic lifts for 1 rep maxes. And that's the reason why it is a lift in the Olympics, because it's really hard. But yeah, they're doing it for reps and they're doing it in ladders and stuff like that. And they look phenomenal, but they only look phenomenal if
you compare what they do. But compare what they do and their training sessions when you're at elite level compared to, like, say, bodybuilding training or powerlifting, it doesn't even compare.
No, not a chance. No, it really doesn't. So, in fact, we were going to talk about that, weren't we? Because you transitioned from bodybuilding to powerlifting. Yeah. So, what was the cue for that? Why did you all of a sudden think, right, I'm going to be a powerlifter?
I always like to have a focus. So when I did my last bodybuilding show, and then I was like, I love the process of dieting. I like seeing my body change, but for me, getting on stage just didn't do it for me. And I had
Oh,
my
okay.
last show, I had quite a bad experience. Like the last week wasn't bad, but then the day before when I like did my water cut, I think I lost about 8 pounds overnight.
Ew.
And then the actual day of the show, you know, I just felt awful. I just felt really, really ill. And then the week after the show, I could barely get out of bed. You know, I was so dehydrated and I was just so ill. And I was like, it's just, you know, it's not worth it for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially now, you know, I've got a child now as well. So it puts things a lot more into perspective.
Mm.
And I always need to have a focus with my training. So there has to be some like goal or something that I'm aiming towards.
Okay.
So there were a lot of powerlifters in my gym at the time. So it was almost the next logical step for me. And it was another challenge. You know, instead of focusing on getting bigger, it was just getting stronger instead.
Okay. So what did you have to do then transitioning from bodybuilding to powerlifting? Because obviously your volume was reduced immensely from bodybuilding focused training to powerlifting focused training. So I'm assuming that you would have to change your food quite a lot.
Yeah, to be fair, I've always trained with high volume. Like, even when I've been powerlifting, like I think, I do my main lifts and my programming for, you know, for my accessory work, but I still train with quite high volume.
Okay.
And for me, that's just personal preference. You know, I'm used to training with such high volume, and I like that approach.
Yeah.
You know, I find I detrain quite fast. So if I was just going in and doing like the main lifts, a bit of accessory work, and going home, like physically it wasn't enough for me, and mentally I wasn't satisfied either.
Yeah, big thing that
You
I've
know,
seen in a lot of bodybuilders transitioning over to powerlifting. Mentally, they just kind of think, shit, I'm not training.
yeah, I found it hard at first because you notice your body change as well, where you're not doing as much volume. Like you do lose muscle.
Mm.
Like you're not giving enough demand to the muscle that you had, you know, to warrant it staying there.
Mm.
And I think a challenge for me was getting used to lifting for reps and then lifting for a 1 rep max. But technically they're very different. It's where I think where a lot of people go wrong. Whereas like, you know, I was squatting like 200 for reps and I'd put 210 on the bar and it snapped me in half.
Yeah.
You know, so it was getting used to the technical differences when you're squatting for reps in a bodybuilding approach than it is to powerlifting. I think that was probably my biggest challenge.
Okay.
Technically the lifts are very different and it's a very different approach in what you do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It's very beneficial in lockdown though, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Everybody wants to be a powerlifter in lockdown because it's just like all I have is a barbell.
Yeah. So basically all you have is the main lifts.
Is the main lift
around that.
How did you find that actually? Just like obviously having a bit of a tangent because I do this quite a lot. You guys know all that I go off on tangents. But going into lockdown, you're obviously wanting to go back and transition back to bodybuilding type training because you stated that, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. But powerlifting bores the shit out of you at the moment.
Yeah. It was boring me kind of just for a while. I don't even know how to describe it. I got to a point where I just wasn't really enjoying myself with what I was doing, so I just needed like something a little bit fresher and like almost to go back to what I knew. And to what I knew that I enjoyed. Like I prefer the training and the intensity of the training. Like for me, going in and doing like 6 sets of 3, like that, like just so boring. And it's like I've been in the gym an hour. I've done 24 reps.
Yeah.
I've been here an hour. I've basically done nothing.
Yeah.
You know,
and you don't even feel it, do you? You don't feel like, even if you were squatting, your ass might be a little bit sore, but other than that, and your back, obviously from lower back loading, but
yeah.
Other than that,
I think every powerlifter could benefit from doing more bodybuilding and volume training. Like,
totally agree.
I talk to a lot of the younger guys that are quite skinny, and all they do are the main lifts. And I'm trying to put a muscle, and I'm like, bodybuild.
Yeah.
Do bodybuilding training. Like, you're only going to get so strong with the muscle that you have, unless like you're a genetic freak, which you're not.
Yeah.
You're only going to get so far with the muscle that you have. So your only method now going forward to get stronger is to build more muscle.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with a lot of powerlifters is they don't have the insight into like the intensity of bodybuilding training. They just think, oh, I'll do 4 sets of 10,
Yeah.
as their accessory work. But you see how they train. I'm like, geez, like my 2-year-old could train harder than you.
I know, right? It is. It's so true.
If you compare how powerlifters go through their accessories, when you see like a big, strong bodybuilder like going through their sets, you're like, fuck me.
Yeah. They're insane.
And there's a reason why they're that big. Like technically, they lift extremely well.
Yeah.
And like they're always extremely strong. Like I reckon like 80-90% of like good bodybuilders will outbench most powerlifters.
Yeah,
Easily.
probably. I don't know really. Oh, this is controversial. I don't know really, because if
unless you're like an elite level, like, powerlifter, but
yeah, for sure.
I know a lot of bodybuilders that will bench 5 plates aside.
Yeah.
And I don't know many powerlifters that bench 5 plates aside.
I agree with that, but if they were to actually do it with full powerlifting commands, they probably couldn't do it, because I've seen bodybuilders who do obviously do your 5 plates aside and stuff like that, massive, big assisted guys, but they don't touch their chest, they don't hold a pause, they have their head off the bench, their arse off the bench, their toes on point, and things like that. So if you were going to get down to technicalities, a powerlifter realistically for that 1 rep max would, I mean, it's just like what you said, you could do 200 kilo on your back for reps, but do 210 and that's it, you're on the floor.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of discrepancy in there.
I think what impresses me more, like when you see the strong bodybuilders, like they're not, when you see someone bench 200 and you're like, but they've not even trained to get strong over a rep range, but they've not ever trained, in a powerlifting sense to get that strong.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. What do you think works better? Do you think that having a base of powerlifting and then transitioning over to bodybuilding would be better, or would it be better, in your opinion, doing it the other way around?
Yeah, I think if you're a beginner, I think people overcomplicate stuff. Like I have people, like clients that work with me, and they've got good physiques and they train with like an upper lower body split.
Sure.
And you tell most people that, and they upper lower, like what?
Yeah.
Most people are very quick to overcomplicate stuff. So I think, I think people would benefit from both, to be honest. Like focus on building a foundation of strength at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's a lot of people that focus on just powerlifting. They don't make the muscle gains that they want, or they focus primarily on bodybuilding, and then they're not as strong as they like.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I like having the both hybrid approach.
Yeah, I'm massively into that. Like I'm all for getting strong across like a variation of rep ranges.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at developing your physique, I think that's really important.
And what would, in terms of like the nutritional aspect then for a hybrid, I mean, let's have a, because I'm a hybrid, I do powerlifting and bodybuilding all at the same time, and I'm doing this most ridiculous challenge known to man at this moment to raise some money for charity. So I'm obviously doing quite a lot of aerobic and aerobic work at the same time. So a lot of conditioning. But I'm eating like a freaking Trojan. I'm only like 52 kilos as well. So I'm a 52 kilo powerlifter and I'm eating a ridiculous amount of food, more so than probably most men. I out eat my husband twice over. And people are always like, oh God, I'm so jealous. But the thing is that I warrant those calories. Now, this is what we were talking about before. So as a powerlifter, it's surprising when I get new powerlifters on board that I actually take calories away from them. And they're amazed at how much better their performance is overall when they actually lose a few kilos, because they're just hoiking around unwarranted weight.
And so you find that their leverages get better. Is that when you've not got a 44-inch waist, you can actually get down and pull a deadlift properly. It's funny that.
And the joint stress obviously comes off. That's another thing that you can obviously look at in terms of like lifting really heavy and then doing some proper accessory like bodybuilding movement, take some joint stress away. So did you find that actually when you transitioned from bodybuilding to a specific powerlifting split that your joints started to degrade a little bit?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been quite proud of the fact that I trained for nearly 10 years, never had a niggle, never had an injury.
Wow.
Probably 6 months into powerlifting, I was like, oh, my fucking knees hurt. Oh, yeah, I've got tendonitis in my elbow a little bit. You know, and I've a lot of it was just, you know, just down to not being used to the loads that are placed on your joints.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a very big change if you're not used to it. You know, you get a lot of, you know, new strength gains, so to speak. And if you've gone from squatting 3 plates a side to well over 200 in a couple of months, it's a big, you know, that's a big change for anyone.
Yeah, definitely.
So there is a lot of wear and tear that goes on.
Did you have to manipulate your nutrition to overcome that?
No, not really. It was more my training. It was more my training loads that I changed.
Okay.
You know, and you know, with powerlifting or bodybuilding, people get stuck into, you know, let's like use squat for example. Like a lot of people's like favorite squat accessory is a box squat.
Oh, I know. God.
You know, and I fucking hate the box squat.
Yeah.
And I see people do it wrong, and I'm like, you're using a box squat as an accessory to build your squat, but you're squatting differently.
Yeah.
Like you're box squatting with like a really wide stance, but that's not how you squat. That's not going to carry over to how you squat. And they're like, yeah, but everyone else does it. I think, yeah, but you're not everyone else.
Exactly. And people don't understand why you use the box squat. It's like, where's your sticking point? What happens if you can't get out of the hole? A box squat ain't going to help that.
You know, I've always prefer like a paw squat or a pin squat, but again, it's relative to the person, and it's, you know, a specificity down to where your sticking point is.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and there's, you know, people, say whether it's a bodybuilding coach or a powerlifting coach, they try and train everyone the same way. They go, this is how you have to squat, and they try and train every client to squat the same way.
Yeah.
But everyone has different leverages and limb lengths.
Yeah.
You know, their biomechanics are very different. You're trying to coach everyone the same way. That's not how it works.
No, it isn't how it works. And it's things like people having people wearing belts and people not wearing belts. You know, wear a belt for a powerlifter. Well, what am I using it for? To help protect my back. That's not what a belt is for.
No, you're not. I have this one all the time. It's like, yeah, I've got a bad back. It's like, don't use a belt. Your back will get better.
Yeah.
Like, and do some core work.
That's it. Now, that's it, core work, right? Core work for powerlifters. Let me get your opinion on this. I am a huge advocate of actually including core work, core specificity work for powerlifters in a multitude of different planes. But a big argument, you don't need to do direct core work because you're going to train at any rate in the big lifts.
No, I think unless you're like genetically at the top and you have an extremely strong core, then it's like I neglected core work for a while. Within 3 or 4 weeks of doing like weighted planks, like side raises, side planks, and like reverse hypers, within 2 or 3 weeks, my back pain had gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was then training it. But I think, you know, it's specific to the person and where you're weak. But core work is like extremely underrated, and I don't know many powerlifters personally that train it. I train core probably every session. Every session I'm in the gym or training, I will do some element of like stability or core training.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, I think the thing with belts as well, people massively rely on belts and sleeves when they train.
Yeah.
And I get the argument for sleeves and like when you're wrapped, because it changes how you squat. So if you're in a federation, if you squat in wraps, then why wouldn't you train in wraps?
Exactly.
Because squatting bare knees or in sleeves compared to a wrap is very different. So you have to train obviously how you will lift in comp. But then a belt, you know, I'm all for trying to actually train yourself to create that abdominal pressure yourself instead of just relying on a belt 24/7.
Definitely. I mean, I like using the differences in terms of like core training. I'm a belt trainer. I have to use a belt because I have a bad brace just due to my internal issues that I have. So a lot of people obviously listening to this know that I have a bowel condition, and that unfortunately does make me rely on a belt for anything heavier than realistically about 60 kilos on the bar. And I think when you try and transition somebody out from that mindset and just saying, well, you have to squat without a belt, or you cannot squat with a belt because it's not going to help your brace in its overall capacity. Mentally, that can really fuck somebody up, and it can really scare somebody to the point where they start to lose trust in you.
And it's relative again. If you have a client that mentally likes wearing a belt, then crack on. Unless they have a specific weakness where not wearing a belt is going to benefit them, then that's a conversation you can have. But if that's something that mentally helps them, then why not?
Yeah, and if they're going to wear a belt in comp, wear it in training.
Yeah. Powerlifting. A lot of powerlifting is mental.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, hell yeah. One thing that I found really funny is talking about accessories, actually, and again, rants. I like ranty ones. Accessories. People who wear accessories for the sake of it. Have you seen those where they wrap their wrists when they're going to do the bench press and things like that, and they wrap them all the way down their arm, and they're still flapping their wrists around.
Yeah, I think probably every single person that I've seen in my gym that wraps their wrist, wrap it wrong.
Yeah.
So and if they're training like with me or like I know them personally, I'll go over and like have a chat and go, why are you wearing wrist wraps? You've done it wrong. I was like, the whole point of wrapping your wrist is to protect your wrist joint, and you've not even touched it.
Yeah. And yet they'll still try and unload a really heavy bar. I used to wear wrist wraps, and I actually found that it hurt my wrists even more. So I was told to strengthen my wrists by not wearing wrist wraps, which is what I did. And now I bench completely naked, well, obviously not completely naked, but my wrists are naked. I don't wrap my wrists anymore for the simple fact that I have loaded them in a very good capacity to the point where I can obviously now pick up a 75 kilo bench, which is way better without having any kind of residual pain. So that's awesome. But yeah, people who use accessories for the wrong reasons, and they're coaches who just imply it, like you said, because it works for me, you need to start doing it. They end up spending thousands of pounds, because let's face it, it's not cheap, is it?
Yeah.
And they have like new designer lifters, like the Innovates or the Nike Romalios and that kind of thing. And it's just like, you have to squat in lifters.
That's a really big pet hate of mine, is people wearing lifting shoes when they don't need to be wearing shoes.
Yeah.
So perfect example is a new powerlifting client that I took on, and she was just wearing shoes because she saw everyone else wearing shoes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but look at your squat, is awful.
Yeah.
I was like, and you've got really short femurs, so for you, like leverage wise, like you do well in flats.
Yeah.
Then like as soon as I went, right, I wanted to do next squat session in flats, send me some videos and we'll talk. And she got a PB. She was like, I feel so much better. I was like, I don't understand. I'm like, yeah, but you've not had a reason to buy shoes. You just bought them because you've seen everyone else buy shoes.
Yeah.
And I did it myself. So I bought shoes because I thought it might help my squat, and it helped me stay upright, but I've got short femurs, so I can stay upright anyway.
Yeah.
And it stopped me loading my posterior chain, so it didn't help me in the slightest. And again, I didn't buy them for the right reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are a lot of people that just, they wear the shoes, or they wear this, or they do this exercise because they see everyone else doing it and they think it helps them.
It is really annoying. And I think, in terms of like the general population client or a brand new person into the world who just kind of think, well, I'm going to follow that person and I'm going to do what he does because it's obviously working for him, so it has to work for me. And they spend all of this money on a belt and elbow sleeves and knee sleeves and shoes and everything else. And I see it just makes everything worse. It makes it worse. It makes it weaker. Yeah. And then they discover that they're not going to be progressing.
Oh no, but you can't ever criticize a powerlifter. Oh my God.
No.
Don't dare criticize a powerlifter.
No, and don't criticize a powerlifting coach either, because if you do that, then you'll burn in hell.
I still love powerlifting. I've got a lot of powerlifting friends, but I've never met a more defensive group of like people in my life.
I know.
Like
I still competitively powerlift, right? I mean, I did the Commonwealth, and I was going to go to the Worlds this year until COVID happened and like fucked up everybody's plans. But one of my very first SBD comp, because I don't do full SBD anymore, I'm just a bench only lifter. My very first one, I remember being behind the curtain and loads of people were sat there, and they were meditating and doing this like visualization technique and all the rest of it. And I'm dancing to like, the Little Mermaid under the sea and just kind of having a bit of a blast because that's what I was there for.
I know they take themselves so seriously. I'm like, fuck, like you lift weights.
Yeah.
You lift weights up and down. It's like, Jesus Christ. I was like, the last comp that I went to, I went to Swansea for a qualifier, and not a single person talked to me.
Oh, really?
Even like there were like a couple of people that I kind of knew.
Yeah.
Everyone else there, even when our flight was warming up, I was like, excuse me, I kind of need to warm up as well.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me like, who the fuck are you? I was like,
but you're an unknown. Like, nobody knows you at that point. So they're not going to give you the respect. I do find that actually in terms of it, unless you do have a known coach or unless you are a known powerlifter, it's almost like, or anybody. It doesn't have to be powerlifting. It can be anybody, can't it? You do not get any kind of respect. You don't have the time on the bar. You don't get anything. You have to force your way in.
But this, like for me, I'm a very like approachable and I'm quite a well-spoken person, but I'm also extremely outspoken. So if someone's rude to me, I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah, man.
I'm like, don't ignore me. I was like, I've just said hi. Like, don't look at me and shrug your shoulders. That is, and they just do it for the wrong reasons. It's like, Jesus Christ, like you just lift some weights, mate.
I know. It's like, just chill out and have some fun. And that's the thing. I think you've got to be passionate about what you do, and you can be passionate in a serious way. But I think if you don't enjoy what you do, let's face it, powerlifting wise, you're in the gym for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
You've got to enjoy that shit, right?
Oh yeah, you've got to enjoy doing it, but it's like, just don't be a dickhead.
Yeah. See, that's my motto. Just don't be an arsehole. It is one of the biggest things that I do in terms of like off-plan meals and things like that. They're like, can I have an off-plan meal this Saturday? Yep, you can do this. These are the parameters that you're going to do. And you have to adhere to the number one Titan rule, which is don't be an arsehole, and that's all it is. And I think all of these things by saying, there was a big thing. I had a big conversation with my daughter about it actually, because she's very, very passionate about anti-racism. And obviously, the big thing about Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on. She's very passionate about it. It makes me very proud actually that she is like that, because I was brought up in Cyprus with a whole multitude of cultures and ethnicities and things like that. But we actually spoke about it, and I said, if I don't like somebody, it's because they're an arsehole. It's not because they're black or they're Chinese or they're Mexican. It's because they're an arsehole, and that is the significant point. And if you are an arsehole, regardless of whether you're a powerlifter at the top of the top elite, or if you're the unknown, if you're an arsehole, I'm still not going to give you the respect because you're an arsehole.
Yeah.
So just basically adhere to that rule. Don't be an arsehole.
Yeah, people should take that advice more.
Yes, I think they should. Right, so we are coming up to about an hour now, Danny. That's been a nice little ramble, hasn't it, really? So is there anything that you would like to leave on as a bit of a poignant point to leave your podcast on?
I think literally everyone that I talk to, and I've seen everyone's getting ready to go back to the gyms now, is people just massively overcomplicating everything. Like I've seen people posting up their workout plans or the diets, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, that gives me anxiety just looking at it.
Oh God. Like what kind of examples have you seen?
So like a training button, you've got like pull session A, chest focus, like leg session this, quad and calf focus. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, but you're 11 stone.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna bring up my arms this year. I'm like, no, bring up the whole of your body. You're really small.
Yeah.
I think people are always looking for like this magic workout or like there's a secret diet or a supplement. It's like, no, like just be consistent. Everyone I talk to, like their biggest downfall is that they're only good 3 days a week.
Yeah.
you know, and it's a massive revelation to a lot of people, I'm sure, that you work with as well, and they go, you know, it doesn't feel like a diet, or, you know, I'm actually enjoying myself and making progress, and it's almost a revelation to them that they can have fun and enjoy what they do and still make progress.
For sure, all the time. And I really do think that if you don't enjoy your training, you won't see the progression. If you do not enjoy what you do, you will not see the progression. It's as simple as that. So I agree. I think that you shouldn't overcomplicate anything. And when you're going back to the gym, just like Danny said, and just get some fun in you. And oh, Jesus Christ, do not go in like a bull in the china shop and think that you need to kill yourself, because you are going to hurt for days.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and you know, whatever your goal, like, look at any good bodybuilder, any good powerlifter, like, they do the basics and they do it well, like, every single day. Like that, you know, you look on like Eddie Cohen's page or something, like, he's so basic in his approach, but he's one of the best powerlifters in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, people should take a lot more insight from, you know, success leaves clues. I know a lot of people say it, but they say it for a reason. It's true.
Absolutely.
Like, all of the best people just keep it basic.
Keep it simple. That's it. Wonderful sauce. And on that note, guys, we are out from Don't Fear the Weight until what is going to be the next one. Oh, I have another very special guest, very good friend of mine, and we're going to talk about overtraining. So are you overtraining? Are you overreaching? What are the symptoms and everything else, which I think will follow on quite nicely from this chat with Danny. So I will get all of the Instagram follow shizzle and the Facebook shizzle from Danny and put it all underneath so you guys can go and reach out to him. And like he said, he is very, very approachable. So if you want to ask him any questions whatsoever, feel free to mither him. I'm saying that that's allowed. He probably doesn't want you to, but I'm saying it's allowed because it's
I don't mind. That's all right.
So
it's fine.
Thank you once again, Danny, for joining me on Don't Fear the Weight.
Yes, thank you.
Care, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Lovely. Take care.
Bye, guys.